So the new game submission period, for those that are unfamiliar with this, it used to be called second submission period. They've now changed it to new game submission period, so that makes a little more sense. Essentially, games that come out pretty well into the year and like pretty close to submission dates or after submission dates close, there is a second period for those games to get routed and submitted because, new game, new hype, that sort of stuff. What people need to understand about GDQ is that where possible, GDQ does not want to have to, and this is how most marathons should be, and I think are, is you don't want to have to generate all the hype for a run. A game's hype should be to some degree
self-generated.
What is it? Self-generated, yeah. So for example, like when, like now that Doom the Dark Ages is out, if it had come out a little bit earlier, it's a new Doom game. So there's a lot of hype around a new Doom all the time.
Dude, that game looks fucking sick. I've been watching Bloodrunner play that shit.
It looks pretty good, pretty yeah. Cool. I feel like it's mostly a downgrade from Eternal, but I have opinions that
yeah, but like, come on, it's still cool.
It's still cool, but like, it is what it is. There's some fucked up tech in that where if you mantle and then open like different layers of the mini map, you can teleport anywhere you want and shit. It's pretty fucked up.
Yeah.
There's also some shit where if you hold down the weapon wheel, you just kind of morph through walls. So it's pretty funny.
Man, I can't wait to watch the Blood Thunder run that at GDQ 2026.
Or whoever it ends up being.
Yeah, whoever it ends up being. But let me put it this way. If Blood Thunder decides to really put his nose to the grindstone, and that guy's run a lot of Doom. Okay. If he really decides, I'm going to be the one to run this at a GDQ, he'll end up being the guy. Unless Mike Wave hops on that shit, and then we got a real match. Then we got a real match, not to discredit people like...
Can't have the microwave hop on, We'll turn
like,
on.
Who else is there that would like really, really good at if Darave or Dangerous decide that they want to ride or like run it a lot, or Dylon, if any one of them really decides that I want to be the dude, then if Nastani decides to, if Bite Me decides that he wants to be the one,
if Bite Me does, Jesus,
or Rytro's a big good candidate as well,
or TFX,
what is that other guy's name?
No, he doesn't have an attention span.
Bloodshot would also be like one of the people that would take it.
I feel like he has more of an attention span than all of us because he mods games. That's a long time.
But that's a separate secret thing called mental illness. Oh my
god. Okay. Yeah,
this is the thing about the GDQ new game submission period is that there is like an implicit bias in it, in that a game being fresh on the market means that it being like part of this smaller pool of consideration ups its chances of getting into the event. So if you decide, well, I'm going to run this thing like day one, frame one, when it comes out, like you've kind of upped your chances over like above the average of people getting into like, or at least an interest in a run, because now the interest is implied by your game having a separate point where it's being considered. And like my 2 cents really is that I think that it shouldn't exist simply because I think games just need more time in the oven.
Yeah.
And like, I don't really care about extra hype and everything. I don't really care about people getting into an event, let's say, quote unquote, over me, or quote unquote over people that.
Stop it! I don't like this shit.
I will say that Nastani is a.
See, so this okay. I hate to derail, but this is mildly traumatic for me because my brother had this thing he would do to me growing up, where he would just like put his hand in my face and try to like face hug my face.
Welcome to the Trauma Dumb podcast.
Yeah, so now I'm getting like war flashbacks to like people trying to.
Did your parents ever do the tickle monster?
Probably. No. I don't remember. But
probably.
Do you know what that is though?
It was my brother, so it was more traumatizing.
Well, if it's a sibling,
understandable.
It's just more fucking.
The tickle monster is just someone who chases after you and tries to tickle you.
No. So you lay in a. Well, this was when we were younger, and I was too stupid to understand that I could just get up and walk away. Really,
still are.
But you lay in the bed, and then like my mom used to love doing this. And I thought it was really funny. And she would go like this, but she would like slowly
The claw.
Like, go down. Yeah, the claw.
Your mom hit you with the claw machine? That's crazy.
And then she'd go like, it would be super slow, and then she'd go, and then it'd be like, and then I'd be like, again, and then she would do it again.
That feels like something that you would do to like your like puppy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I did have to pee on newspaper sometimes, so.
Man, he just took the layup.
That's a waste of good fire starter. That's a waste of good fire starter.
The commitment to the bit, I respect it.
W bit.
Dang. Yeah, but
anyway,
to wrap up my
I don't know.
To wrap up my 2 cents, I wasn't going to interrupt Cole while he was talking. So
he's going to interrupt you.
Well, I was going to say, because when we get something out of him, you know, you just got to let him ride, because it might be the only thing that we get out of him the whole episode. So
I'm about to go back to bed, guys. Come on.
But to wrap up my 2 cents, basically, is that, like, I think it's cool when you get to see the early days of a game's routing, but I think that now the amount of like new submissions that like get in now is making people a little hastily route these things. There are some exceptions, I think, where I think that like new releases with tons and tons of runners that submit, like a new Resident Evil, a new Mario game, a Metroid game,
like Oblivion Remaster.
Oblivion Remaster. Those things are largely going to be figured out within a couple of months. Some tech will come along later that will make the game revitalized as like for a future submission, which, for example, like I think the Silent Hill 2 remake, it was cool that this last event we really got to see like a mostly glitchless route for it. And now the next time that game appears, it's going to be like an hour shorter due to one piece of tech that got found. Probably over an hour shorter. But I digress. The idea is basically for me is that a lot of these events are about showing the culmination of effort over a long period of time, you know, and showing people essentially that like we know these games down to a science. And right now, when it comes to showing games like a month or two out, you show that people that you know this game down to what's been figured out so far, or like the fundamentals. So I think that, not to say that there's a lack of effort, right? But I think that there are just hastily thrown together submissions when it comes to this stuff, because people really want to be in the event, and I don't blame them for that. But I think sometimes it comes at the expense of the showcase. So
I think a couple, I mostly agree. That's mostly my opinion with it. There are a couple of other slights I have against the idea as a whole. I think you were talking a bit about bias earlier. I think it skews bias towards certain types of games and certain types of runners. Games wise, the things that are like being made by the games industry right now are going to be centralized in certain types of genres because that's what's selling right now, right?
That's true.
So like platformers are, you know, kind of like, especially that like old PS1 and 64 style platformer are everywhere right now.
Lunistic.
Lunistic, for example. Roguelikes, you know, right? So, you know, Soulsborne games, you know, when Lies of P came out, you know, that was a prime candidate, right? And so I think because of that, it causes there to be a bigger proportion of those types of games in the event at the expense of other genres or like types of communities, like some of the older game, like retro communities, or, you know, like the PlayStation community, for example, right? So I think it favors that, but it also favors the people. So this is a broad problem with speedrunning, where the biggest like determining factor as to your success as a speedrunner is time, money, resources. Okay? That's just the truth. Like, you could be the most talented person in the world at playing video games, but if you don't have the time, or like the, you know, like not constantly worrying about paying rent, to be able to excuse me, to be able fuck.
You good?
Went down the windpipe. Excuse me. Okay, we're good. So, TLDR, you know, if, you know, you're like a high school kid who doesn't have to worry about paying his own rent, then you're going to have more time and energy to be able to put into speedrunning than someone like, I don't know who I was using, like Shredberg, for example, who has like a kid, right? Yeah. So it's, And because of that, and because of the time constraints and the delays, I find that we end up seeing the same kinds of faces that get in through second submission period a lot, or through some of these newer games a lot.
Yeah.
And that bothers me specifically. And again, this is coming from someone who literally benefits from what the status quo is right now, because I got a game in on second submission period. I get in all the time, right? And
flex.
You know, but that's a problem too, right? Because that means to some degree we're not growing our talent as a speedrunning community, right? So like what happened, you know, like there are, you know, runners who will just kind of like submit and get in every time, like me, like Blood Thunder, you know, like Spike Vegeta, for example, even, right? So what ends up happening when you keep trying to tap them for their performances and then they get burned out, or they decide they don't want to do it anymore? Who do you have left at that point? And the answer is no one, because you're not developing your talent, right? So that's what bothers me about it, is it just feels like it is like trying to capitalize on a short-term gain, and as a result, it's causing the foundation and the roots of like GDQ as well as just speedrunning as a whole to be left untended. And that's kind of what bothers me about it.
I agree with that, because I mean, the thing too is that it does also favor like full-time content creators as well. And I think that to some extent, it's good that the people that have all this time to spare are using it to do showcases of new games, you know, because if anybody's going to have the time to make sure that that showcase is good, it's going to be
one of those people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's two sides to that coin.
Yeah, there absolutely is. It's just one of those things where like...
A big reason why I'm able to do the runs that I get to do is because I always have like 5 games I can submit, because I have time to have 5 games ready to submit. Because I can't work. So it's like...
There you go. It's just one of those things where like... I think that to some degree, like if people want to be in the marathon, this is pretty much entirely a meritocracy, right? Like you have to make sure that the best foot that you put forward is better than the next person's, or it's at least better than enough people's to get in. And even with the second submission period, it's still largely a meritocracy. It's just that there is the caveat of, look, dude, the game is carrying you a little bit here, you know? Yeah. But at the same time, it's like, I think to a degree, it's not as organic of a submission as somebody like, even, you know, like when you and I go out hunting for new games, right? We're often not hunting for the new thing, you know? Yeah. We might say, oh, if this game comes out, I'll run it. I can probably name like on my entire, like one hand, on
a couple of fingers. Like,
between the two of us, when a new game has come out and we've just like rammed full steam ahead.
It doesn't happen often for me, for sure.
And also, you know, you could probably lower that even further by the amount of times we submitted that kind of new game to a GDQ, you know? So it's a little weird to me, because again, I think that a lot of this is about the culmination of a like year's worth of effort, and things are a lot faster now, both, you know, figuratively and literally, where games get figured out faster, times are lower than they've ever been. It's harder now than ever to be a top speed runner than it has been in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
But there's just some that just don't really sit right with it about me, where you just look at like a handful of games and you just tell those people, you know, and this goes for pretty much any marathon that does it. You know, like you just kind of tell them like, yeah, we'll give your run some extra time to be looked at. You know, like we're going to look at it amongst a smaller group. If you really want it to be a meritocracy, it has to be looked at. You just delay submission period and then you have them in with everybody else.
Yeah.
You know, so, but on the other hand, of course, if none of those submissions are good enough, then they just bring in people from backup and go, okay,
but and that's the thing that bothers me. They say that, but they never do it. They never do it.
Oh,
they
wow.
never do it.
I think also just to like play a little devil's advocate and just kind of push back a little. I'm not sure if like GDQ is the place to grow your talent, right? There's so many other like marathons going on all the time.
Yeah.
And that's really where you're supposed to be growing your talent and like getting the runs and like getting reps on them like over and over again.
I think yes, but also no.
Like I did so many runs of like frights and all these like random marathons, and then all the way through like for years before I ever got accepted into GDQ to do Lunistus. Granted, it wasn't frights, so it's an imperfect thing, but like I was still honing my, marathon chops there, so that
You're
whenever
still figuring out how to perform.
Yeah. Sure. So like I figure out how to perform, and then I'm like, okay, I am good enough to be in GDQ. And like I don't think GDQ is a place for someone to figure out how to be good. I feel like you still need to be good already to be there. And so that's why and like maybe you're referring to something different with the like growing your own talent or whatever, but to me like that's what that means, is that like you're growing your talent, like you take a chance on someone and hope that they get good or whatever. And it's just like
the way there's a cat.
That was a little cat. That's cute.
So the way I agree with you, but I think the way I see it is different. I think, running at online events and stuff. Cat. I don't know who's
every time I see the cat audio listeners, I will meow.
Fair enough.
So you know to look back on the screen.
But I think my thing is the way I see what you've described is kind of, if we're using like a Smash Bros. Or fighting game analogy, it's the difference between like, honing your craft at a locals versus traveling to go to a bigger event. Like you can practice all you want and get really, really good at your local or what have you. But there are specific things with regards to going to like a major or super major that are a lot different environment wise, right? Like not only the types of people you're going to be around and working with, but it's like the vibes are different. The stakes are also different too. That's the other thing, is like the GDQ stakes and like the pressure to do well at a GDQ is a lot higher than it is to, for like a marathon, because there are just more eyes on you. So
is that a different cat? There are two cats on
there.
There's a kitten. There's a kitten. It's okay. Rainbow will find him, and then we can go look ourselves.
True. Yeah.
There's two different cats.
Judging by the direction of the sunlight, and
there's two kittens.
I think that interestingly enough, right?
Indiana
it's like
gradient.
True. Oh, the Indiana sky dude.
The cynical gradient.
Anyway.
So what I will say, right, is that like I think that it is not GDQ's, like it does not need to be their function to like get people to be good, because that was kind of their function at the start, because they were really the only game in town. And I think that now that responsibility has spread out, to a lot of the
to things like hotfix or
hotfix
marathons.
or even to an extent RPG Limit Break, for people that run certain types of games. And I think that GDQ is something to like work towards, because that is kind of like the final test, right? Or one of the final tests in terms of your ability to showcase a game, or, having your game be interesting enough to even get on the schedule too. But it's like, I kind of go back and forth on this stuff, because at the end of the day, whatever GDQ staff decides is like best for their company, I'm just going to kind of roll with, because I'm not really in their shoes, or anything like that. But because that is the other thing too, is that, we talk about this stuff, but at the end of the day, they do have to kind of stabilize, as a company. And they're not necessarily in the points of luxury that they were in before.
Well, the economy is also just shit, so that's part of it.
Yeah, there's definitely that, but I think that when
economy,
there's not the level of like novelty to speedrunning that there was before, and like there's a lot of just variables that we could toss around probably forever, or at least for hours, about this sort of stuff. But it's a point that I kind of just go back and forth on with like developing new talent, because I think that first and foremost, it starts with like just having more in-person marathons in general. Like, and I don't know if I'm going to be the one to organize stuff like that, but I think really there just needs to be true. I think there just needs to be at least somebody or some people kind of carrying those torches for like regional stuff, because I think that it's a disservice to I guess the social aspect of GDQ or just marathons where that shouldn't be the only point in the year where you get to see, a bunch of your speed friends, right? And develop your craft or develop or show off your passion for the game on a larger platform than your own stream, I
think that's also like
it's a complicated topic.
I was just going to say that I think that's also like the kind of unfortunate thing about like ESA going down, or like, I mean, they're still around, but like
it's nowhere near the same.
Losing respect really at a rapid pace. And
the viewership and donations is way down.
Yeah, but like from like where they were, like when I ran for them in like 2020, like it's way better, or I guess 2021, whatever. Like that was like, it was good to have another like big dog in the scene, right? Like it wasn't just GDQ, like you had ESA for all the European people. So like, I think like I think it's good to like have the regional based thing, but I think also with like the US, I think there could be more of that. But I think Europe just kind of needs like another big dog to step up.
Europe needs something.
Because
you might argue it's speed-on nowadays, but we'll see.
Yeah,
it just depends on if it takes off, right? But it's like that's what we need is like just more like competition. I think if you want like, lesser known things to get in, but it's also just kind of the thing where it's just like, at some point, I don't know how many more events you can create where like people still will want to watch, because like speedrunning for a majority of people is kind of like a one and done thing. Like after you watch a speedrun, a lot of people don't really see the point in watching it again. Like I feel like it's a lot. It's like, oh, this is novel. This is cool. Ooh, this nice showcase pog. Yippee.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go watch the streamer though, like reset to the same trick over and over again. Like that's not how most people view like content. Those are like the more hardcore like Twitch frogs who like really like live streams and stuff like that. But like for, I think the mass majority of people, like you're not really going to have that kind of like a following, like, cause even if you really think about it, like the Mario runners are not that big. Like let's keep it a stack. You know what I mean? Like in terms of like,
are they even like regularly 1,000 average or no?
Most of them, no. Like the only one that really is Simply, who does other things, and Squeaks, who basically isn't a Mario runner anymore. He does like actual streaming stuff now, and he's like been on like Cuties shows and whatever. And like Simply's also like in like the Mizkif S-fan like crowd, and so he's done a lot of other things off stream, like like regular stream stuff. So like if you look at like the actual like top runners who play the game, Callie's top 5, he has like anywhere from like 70 to 100 viewers. Ouija has like, he hovers around 500 ish, and then Green Ouija has done it again. He hovers around again like 500 to 700 to 300. He's really weird. He actually fluctuates really hard. I actually don't really know his averages very well, but like point being, like it's not like every Mario runner is just like clocked at like over 1,000 views, right? Like they're not going live and they're not farming like 1K, 2K. Like it's very unconventional for like any like speedrunning even at the highest level to be that popular. And so I think that's another concern for me with it, is that it's like, what is really the ceiling on this craft? Like I just think that this craft is like, fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to view it, I think there is a cap to this, and I think that's like, that's been kind of like, I mean, that's why like, I mean, me and Cole have talked about this so often, but it's like trying to think of like what to make with speedrunning content is so hard, and it always just end up becoming small, and you're like, let's do a challenge video. It just turns into a challenge video. You know what I mean? Yeah. And they're cool though. Like I have watched almost every video Small has made because they're great videos. But you know what I mean? It's just like, what can you really do with speedrunning like so far? Because even Small, he started with speedrunning with Mario Odyssey and stuff, but then he just like, you know how he hit? Pokemon mods and Pokemon challenges. Like, you know what I mean? Isn't speedrunning anymore. And it's just like, granted, he still speedruns. I mean, but like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like,
that's the thing too, right? Is that like, you kind of have to catch the wave when you can. So like,
and it's also like, like, in a way you use your speedrunning like skill though, in order to do these challenges, right? So it still like translates somewhat, but like when people don't view it as speedrunning, it might be speedrunning to you, but not to most people. I don't know. Anyway,
that's what I kind of mean about like catching the wave, is like, this is why like to an extent, a new game submission period exists, is because like maybe those viewers won't be around when the game is actually developed, because they'll have moved on to something else.
News cycles.
So you kind of have to, you have to catch them when you have to catch them in their donations when you can.
Yep.
And it's like, even though I think that ideally it shouldn't exist, like it perhaps is a necessary evil, right?
I have a different, I think it should exist, but I think it should exist very limitedly. Like, I think what Jackson was saying, where like they're like, oh, we pull from backup runs. I think A, they should actually do that, but I think B, like, I think they should be more restrictive with what they take, and not to I'm about to throw Jax completely under the bus, but like, I think that like with second submission, like you should only really like take games like Oblivion remaster, like come on, like we're gonna take that. Agree. Or like if the Doom game came out on time, take the Doom game, but like Sea Frog or something. No offense, but it's like no one really knows what that is. Like.
It got submitted because it's new.
Yeah, but like because you submitted,
and I think that game deserves to be in a schedule, maybe just next event.
Yeah, but like the thing is, you submitted it in second game submission period because it came out in like the time, right?
Yeah,
and that's my point, is that I don't think this is counterintuitive with the whole podcast, but I don't think like smaller games should really be on that second submission period. I think the smaller games should belong on the main schedule, on the backup, and then like however many like super big, like if a new Elden Ring comes out or something or whatever the fuck, like you take the super huge ones for the new submissions and then you pull from backup. And I think you just fill out the schedule more with backup, and you like really limit the second submission to just the top tiers, and maybe like one or two like bangers. Like for example, like if I don't know when Big Catch is going to launch, but let's say Big Catch launches in time for the second submission period of GDQ 2026, like then that game I think would be like, it's swag enough and cool enough to get in, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think
now, do you think that to that end, do you think that they should even put in like the new game submission thing, like we are primarily looking for runs of XYZ game, or do you think
they've
that's
done that in the
too
past?
Far? Oh, have they? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, like, I think that would be cool. I would be like, hey, I think that would be lit. I think I would love that. I would be like, hey guys, these are the second submission games periods that we're looking at. And then if you have anything else that coming out in this time that you think is cool, you can submit it. But these are primarily what we're looking at. We want runs of this. I think that would be really cool and transparent. And then you have, okay, this is what they're looking for. And then like, I think making exceptions to that, I think the whole thing though is I think there should be exceptions to every rule, and like this whole thing.
Sure.
Like I don't think it should just be like
rules were
we're only
broken.
doing this or we're only doing this. But
do y'all want to hear my?
I think it should be like a concerted like focus of being like, hey, let's actually use backup runs, because I made a joke about it when we were talking about the SGDQ list 2 episodes ago or whatever. Like with Jax being on backup, I was like, he got a fake run in because like backup runs basically aren't used. Like, unfortunately, you know what I mean? But that's just the way it is. So like for me, I view a backup run. I'm like, if I got on the backup, I would just be like, oh, I didn't get in.
Yeah.
You know, like, but that's just how I view it, and that's not it's not how it's supposed to be viewed. But I think like, because it's really just like the only way you're getting in is if like the just watch a Melee tournament. If the event is like running ahead, that's the only way you're gonna pull up, and even
off
then
checkpoint. Yeah.
Like,
well, and the other thing too is
I
feel like
the way
more
than 5 backup runs get pulled every event.
I feel like the way committee's looking at it too is like they have these like second submission periods blocked out, and rather like they feel like, oh well, we have this time blocked out, so we need to fill it with second submission games rather than we could use it for either or.
Yeah.
Which is what disappoints me with the way that they look at it. So I have a really like kind of spicy, like I think this would be a really funny way of like getting people to rethink about it a little bit, of like a rule change with how second submissions would work. I think that if you want to submit to something on second submission period, there they are. I think if you want to submit to something on second submission period, it should take away from one of your submissions during the main submission window. Yeah, I told you there's 2 of them.
Holy shit. Sorry, can you repeat that sentence? Because I was definitely cat zoned on them. Okay. That was unfortunate. I'm sorry.
So for those who don't know, when you submit to like mainline, like the main schedule period, right? You can submit 5 games.
Yeah.
Okay. And then for second submission period, you can also submit 5 games, which is insane, right?
That is kind of wild.
Right.
So you get 1.
it should just be one or like maybe two, but like no, right? But here's my thought process. If you submit 5 games to a mainline submissions window, you shouldn't be allowed to submit anything to second submission. So any submissions that you want to use during second submission should be subtracted from the initial pool that you're allowed to submit from.
I think that's a base change.
Five games across both.
Yeah, I fucked with that. Yeah.
Good take.
Like, so basically you get 5 submissions across first and second submissions.
And if you want to save one of your slots for, the new submission, or 2 or 3, however you want to save,
Yeah.
I think that is based. I don't think that solves any problem, but I think it's cool.
Because if you don't submit anything first round, you get 5.
It forces hesitation for people who already run a lot of games and are just looking for ways to try to get onto the schedule, which you could argue I was kind of doing a little bit. It's like,
I would argue
it forces you to really think. It forces you to really like think about it.
And then it also, to an extent, right, it rewards people that have dedicated a lot of time to 1 or 2 games, and then a new game comes out and they've maybe found their 3rd or 4th speed game.
Yeah.
So. You have like 1, bro. It's fine.
I have 3. Put some respect on my name. And 2 of them I'm record holders in. What are you talking about?
That's fair. You should get record in Dalmatians.
4. I always forget about fucking Dalmatians, but I think I'm still top 5 in that game. I played it for a month.
I think so.
I'm a G,
Let me take a look.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You should get record in that game.
No. I'm never playing that game again.
Why not?
I peaked. I got that, dude. Okay, you know, like when
more
you're
like you tweaked,
running,
bro.
You know when you're like speed running a game, right? And like you get a crazy run, and you're like, that's a really cool run. If I want to improve this, I'm gonna actually have to play the game. And like for me,
I get that.
That was that Dalmatians run for me, is that I slammed that run so hard, so good that I'm like, all right, now I'm gonna have to actually get good at the game and practice the game like responsibly, and I don't want to do that. Dude, so I'll just take my top 5 and I'll bounce.
You could literally get into top 3 if you saved fucking 7 seconds, bro.
Yeah, here's the thing. It's been a whole it's been almost 2 years since I played that game. It's not happening. Besides, Cole fucking
tragic
most of my time right now, and I was planning on learning KOTOR 2, but now I have to play this stupid fucking Nuzlocke Scooby Hardcore mod because it's fun, and I have to play it.
You have to.
I do have to play it.
You have no free will whatsoever.
I have no free will, but I mean, what's going to end up happening is I'm going to like play it for like this next week, and then I'm going to learn the game, and then I'm going to like do KOTOR runs and then do that. But because I think it's going to take
your secret is safe with
like,
me.
I think it's going to take like a couple months for me. Like it won't take Cole a couple months because he has fucking all goddamn day to fucking play the game, but like I don't, Smile. So it's going to take me a little bit longer, I think. Smile. So
yeah, I still don't know if I should call it a Nuzlocke or not.
I think it's fine.
I feel
like it is fine. Across.
Meow. I know. But people are like, oh no, but actually, and I'm like, well,
I think instead of saying like super
it's
hard
good
Nuzlocke, I think instead of super hard Nuzlocke, you should just say hardcore Nuzlocke. I think that just is cleaner. Like 900 Fights, hardcore Nuzlocke. I think that rolls off the tongue better than super hard Nuzlocke. Although I do think super hard Nuzlocke is funny.
Me when I'm super hard.
You've never been super hard in your life. And speaking of being super hard, you should be super hard and hit the like and subscribe button really hard